Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, toilers, spoilers, and cabbage boilers, welcome along to the Joe Spivey YouTube channel where we discuss books and little else. And you join me in the verdant enclave of Northern England, which is, as per usual, sullen and glowering. And so I have retreated to my Hollywood-esque retreat with my well-lit studio and all of my little minions all jittering about the place, trying to make sure that everything's lit very well. So hopefully this is broadcast to you in a sort of visually advantageous way. You join me once more for our Slashing at Hacks series, wherein I take myself and my readily available capital down to a local supermarket and purchase a publication of repute. And this week it is none other than Esquire's Winter Edition. This is a huge wad of journalism, I think it's called, which comes at the princely sum of £7. So I'm not sure you need an asset management company or you need to be the descendant of some Saudi prince to purchase this, much as I did. And so yes, this is what we're going to be discussing this week. If you happen to want to offer any of the rebuttals for the comments that I make, if you want to offer a refutation, if you want to discuss any of the the weaknesses in what I've said, I can't wait to initiate that dialogue. That'll be lovely for you guys to come and tell me just what it is you think, where it is I've gone wrong, what are my misdemeanors and malpractices, yada yada yada. If, however, you would just like to offer personal insult, if you would like to riff on an immutable characteristic of mine, whether that's the configuration of my facial features or my accent, then you can thoroughly bugger off. If you would like to come to the erroneous assumption about my socioeconomic position, you should just crawl back under the bed cover from whence you came. But yes, no personal insults, thank you. But if you would like to criticise whatever on earth it is that I have said, then I welcome that and can't wait to talk about it. So here we are, the winter edition of Esquire. One thing to note about this is that it comes pretty much complete with every single high-end, or an advertisement for every single high-end brand in the Western world. On the cover, or not on the cover, on the first page we have, I believe his name's Robin Pattinson, a recovering vampire who, but for the concerted collective adoration of mindless idiots, also known as 8-year-old girls, he would be just a wandering idiot. But yes, of course, there he is with it's an advert for Dior. And yes, you can clearly see him wearing a leather jacket there. Of course, that has been integral in the slaughter of 7 or 8 farmyard cows and the deaths of at least 11 Taiwanese toddlers who put it together. But of course, they aren't particularly squeamish in Esquire about advertising that. What else do we have? There was one other advert that I wanted to draw your attention to. This is for Breitling watches. This particular one advertised is or brought to our attention is the Avenger. And you'll notice a few very idiosyncratic features of this watch. First of all, it's circular and metallic, and so is durable. It comes with a handy strap just here so that you can actually pop it all the way around your wrist so that it stays on your person at all times. Lots of watches rely on you just balancing it on your wrist throughout the day, so that's nice and handy. You will see also it has been engineered so that there is a small hand here which denotes the hour that you've just either come into or are about to go into, and then you have a large hand here which denotes just how far you've come through that hour or how far away you are from the upcoming hour. And that is, yeah, it's a new innovation for watches. Timepieces for time immemorial have just been concerned with offering your favourite foods, whereas now you can actually see just how close it is to bedtime, folks. So that's all jolly good. They've also got small circles here where you can track the progression of your FTSE investments, or you can see just how far away your milkmaiden is, otherwise known as your wife. And you can, and I believe there's a little switch here so as you can change the time if you so wish. And I think you'll agree, for £3,500 to £6,000, that isn't a bad deal whatsoever. So those are Breitling watches. They don't sponsor this video. That would be a shameless plug if they did. But I thought I'd bring your attention to them anyway. So a few articles that I just want to crossover. First of all, this is a popularity contest. The Aston Martin DB12 knows how to make friends. There is the Aston Martin there, look, in British Racing Green. It's not very good for showing it, but there's the Aston Martin along, presumably somewhere like I don't know, where will that be? Tuscany or something like that? It's a bit verdant for Tuscany. I'm sorry, no, a bit cobbly. It's probably in Tunisia somewhere. Again, this has got a splendid opening. This is written by Will Hersey, I think. So this talks about some of the prejudices that people have against Aston Martin owners. You know that moment when you emerge from a side road hoping to join a queue of traffic only to realise that, no matter how sweetly you smile, no one is going to let you out. It's hard enough to appeal to your fellow driver's good nature if you're driving a battered Vauxhall Corsa, but if you're in a gleaming supercar that does 14 miles per gallon with a private number plate and a carbon body pack, you may as well just switch the engine off and check your food supplies. Simply put, people would rather drive into the car in front than acknowledge your existence. Trying to appeal to universality because everybody drives cars. Eventually, desperate and possibly dehydrated, you'll be forced to shove your oversized bonnet into the thoroughfare to a hail of horns, so cementing the pushy and entitled reputation that got you here in the first place. You could call it Bentley's Law. The more expensive the vehicle, the longer the wait. And this is crucial journalism, folks. This is really, really important stuff because, you know, Christmas is just around the corner. I'm sure as a little stocking filler for Jimmy and Janet, you are looking for the new Aston Martin DB11 just to pop in there. It's a little bit of a supplementary thing. It's not going to be the showstopper. It's not going to steal the show, but it would be nice just to spark up Christmas Day by giving one or two of your progeny a nice little Aston Martin just for £200,000. So it talks about it. Oh, it isn't short of power. There's no V12 engine option. I know. I was craving the V12 in this. Just the existing AMG sourced twin turbo V8, which, thanks to larger turbochargers and improved cooling systems, produces 671 horsepower. Now, I've only experienced vehicles of 650 horsepower up to now, so that will be very interesting too. Once I inevitably get my hands on such a vehicle, I can't wait for that. So for the first time, Aston has designed and built its own screens in-house, so the interior is all much better. So yes, these are more pictures of said Aston Martin, now owned by, I think, Lawrence Stroll, who is in the Formula One trade. But let's move on. We have an article about why cinema apparently loves a sniper. This is Shot by Kevin Mayer, I believe. All hail the return of Michael Fassbender. The Oscar-nominated actor and X-Men star is back on our screens after a 4-year hiatus. He drove racing cars, moved to Portugal and had a child, and wow, what a statement rebirth. He fills almost every frame of David Fincher's The Killer and is dominant throughout as a top-tier assassin with a penchant for yoga, telescopic sights, and the dulcet tones of Morrissey. The soundtrack, filtered through our protagonist's headphones, is non-stop The Smiths, from opening to closing credits. And then it talks about, as I say, how movies love snipers. Movies clearly love snipers. Always have and always will. There's something about them in their murderous, eagle-eyed efficiency, the watching and the sadism that runs directly into the DNA of the medium. And it's an appeal that's unusually devoid of moral context. Think of the great screen snipers such as, say, Edward Fox's The Jackal in 73's The Day of the Jackal, stroking his custom-made rifle, complete with silencer, scope, and explosive-tipped bullets. Beautiful piece of work, he drools, minutes before famously blasting a watermelon to pieces in an Italian forest. Now, they go on to talk about just why it is that snipers are so adored by directors and often put into films. I don't think they're more preponderant than ice cream salesmen or people who fire RPG rockets or, surfers. I don't think that I've never noticed that snipers are more preponderant than many other things, but apparently they are because the journalist has informed us of that. At their most cartoonish, movie snipers are almost literal superheroes. Filmmakers will tell you it's because of the parallels. The sniper's scope, for instance, is directly analogous to the movie camera. The sniper is a director lining up the shot. It's interesting to note here that in the recent documentary Brainwashed, Sex, Camera, Power, feminist academics explicitly related the shooting of a camera to the firing of a gun and called for the banning of the S-word on all future film sets because the language is too violent and aggressive and too closely associated with murder. Now, the journalist here has misspoke, unfortunately, because he mentions feminist academic, when what he actually meant was embittered, power-hungry fascist who would like to see every single human adult male on the planet put into a concentration camp and systematically culled. So yes, unfortunately he's got his definitions wrong there. There is no such thing as a feminist academic anymore. They are all just people ready to assume power and slit anybody's throat who happens to have a penis. But yeah, they talk about, in his recent book, Murder and Movies, David Thompson suggests that we're drawn to watching murder on screen because it taps our bleakest desires to do the same. Film, he says, are serving up films plural, he says, are serving up the meat for our fantasies, and in that process they are licensing and indulging taboos against ravishing and murder. In short, he says that we watch those exquisite kill shots because part of us, maybe most of us, parenthesised, wants to pull the trigger. Now, in order to justify anything that seems to be ubiquitous or much used these days, you just have to say that we secretly want to do that, and which is, of course, completely asinine rubbish. But anyway, let us continue. This is just the final small one that I will seek to highlight. This is the Manhattan Project. Oh dear. The Manhattan Project, Why We Still Love New York. This is by Alex Bilmes. There's a little bit of New York. I'll be interested to hear the reaction of any New Yorkers watching, or anybody that frequents New York, or anybody, heaven forbid, from New York. I should like to know what you think about these assertions made in this article. From the mid-90s until 5 years ago, like so many people, I made regular pilgrimages to Manhattan, at least once or twice a year. Initially entirely for pleasure, then for business and pleasure, latterly mostly for business. But in the period preceding the pandemic, the trips became less frequent, and since 2018 I hadn't been at all. Yada yada, and then so feedback from those who had not was uniformly positive. Friends and colleagues, and some permanent residents too, reported that the city seemed to have suffered more than most from the lockdowns and their aftermaths. The way they told it, the bagel had gone stale. New York, I was told, was tatty, bedraggled, even humbled. Hard to believe, and I didn't quite, but still my informants persisted. The subway was overrun by crazies, rats the size of sheepdogs had taken control of Central Park, the whole place stank of weed, not in a good way, because of course what this writer doesn't want you to know is that he is helplessly addicted to mind-altering drugs and smokes cannabis every Saturday night because he thinks that it enlivens his senses. Woe betide. Frankly, this all seemed a bit rich to me. These were the same people who had complained for decades that New York had been gentrified into submission, downtown had been Disneyfied, Brooklyn's edge had been blunted. Now urban archivists who had long mythologized a lost demimonde of junkie punk poets, he just wants to say how many big words he can jam in the space of 3 or 4 syllables, were holding about their noses and coming over all suburban about littering. What happened to the concrete jungle where dreams are made of? This article never really makes a point. He talks about his journey to New York recently that ended really well, purely because he's paid £4 trillion a month to edit a magazine that not many people read. But anyway, this is the next access point. This is Sir Keir Starmer, the candidate. Who is Keir Starmer, really? Now, many of the charges thrown at Sir Keir are that he is somehow a boring, emotionless, rather cold and unprepossessing dolt that really, hasn't got a political bone in his body and sort of is unexciting. This speaks to the caprice of modern media because, of course, you either have to be some monegasque oil tycoon with, 400 squintillion pounds in the bank and 5 rock star girlfriends with, with aspirations to go to Saturn one day, or you have to be a street-dwelling pauper who eats beans from the can, who lives in tunnels and goes on nuts and berries and lives by his own wits. You either have to be that person or that person. You cannot be some subtle nuance in between. And that, of course, speaks to the fact that nowadays people would rather spend their time on TikTok preoccupying themselves with, videos of Michael Jackson fornicating with a donkey, where it's just thing, oh, a thing related to the previous thing, oh, a thing riffing on that other thing, oh, another thing, oh, an excellent thing that the algorithm tells me I should like. If you don't give yourself time to consider issues such as the apposite and most propitious people that we would like to have at the top of politics, then of course you get the querulous idiots, also known as Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn and Donald Trump, and even to some extent Bernie Sanders and AOC, yada yada yada. So anyway, this begins, this is supposed to pry into Keir Starmer and to really dig out some sort of character of the man. So the Right Honourable Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party and of His Majesty's opposition since 2020, and according to all polls, Britain's Prime Minister in waiting, is a solidly built 61-year-old white man, because of course his race is of paramount concern, with the purposeful stride and plausible manner of a senior manager. Manner and manager in close propinquity. I'm not sure about that. He thinks he's a stylist, this guy, which is, in a way, exactly what he is. If Starmer in person projects anything you might not catch in his not always scintillating media appearances, it's an intense focus. He's businesslike, he's competent, he's on message. To his detractors, this is his curse. He's too serious and insufficiently charismatic to be Prime Minister, because of course you need to be charismatic to be Prime Minister, to legislate on the important issues of the plight of the poor, on international relations, on anthropogenic climate change. You need to be able to somehow make some pithy comment on, the zeitgeist and the state of the nation. You don't actually. You just need to know what you're talking about and have a modicum of self-control and self-belief. That's all you need. To his boosters, it's his gift. He is serious, as he should be in his position. He's dignified, because that's what's required. He's not just here for the photo op. He's not interested in fame for its own sake. He's here to fix things, to make a difference, aren't we all? And then it gets a long disquisition on what it is that Keir Starmer stands for. An office at the school has been set aside for our interview. That's Mr. Bilms and Mr. Starmer. Some more pictures of him there. That's him as a young, I don't really know. That's probably as a young barrister. And then that's him as a Queen's Counsel barrister. And then that's him going into some sort of, it looks like an East End flat. I'm not sure. The pair of us take seats at a conference table, yada, yada, yada. So why is oracy important? Because he's at a school talking about how it is that public schools prioritise self-projection and self-expression and being able to extemporise rather than just reading off of notes. And he says that, state schools ought to do that as well. I too can do cursory questions, although it seems like a good place to start, because Starmer is himself proof that social mobility exists in Britain, or at least that it existed when he was a boy. That's maybe why I feel so strongly about it, he says, that progress has been the story of my life. I was lucky to have the opportunities I have had. It is shocking, he continues, that too many children's futures are determined by how much their parents earn rather than their own talent and ability. What drove my parents, he says, what comforted them even, was this belief that they had that the next generation, their kids, would get a better chance than they had. That is the story of my life, but it shouldn't be an exceptional story. It should be so commonplace that you shouldn't have to interview me about it. My story should be the everyday story. Hear, hear. But of course you will have some ludicrously well-remunerated troglodyte from The Spectator or from the Daily Mail or from The Sun that will somehow seek to repudiate that, even though it's a completely defensible statement. And then we talk about these weird assertions by political commentators that the atomisation of politics is a really, really terrible thing, and that somehow politics isn't divisive by definition. Every new incumbent prime minister or president that takes over a regime talks in this really vapid, insipid language of unity and about people that you've excoriated and ridiculed for the last 3 months on the campaign trail are now suddenly human beings that you have to get along with. And so a party led by an unprincipled after-dinner clown, that's Boris Johnson, faced off against a party led by a humourless, rabble-rousing ideologue, that's Jeremy Corbyn, both bristling with animus. The centre had not held. The culture wars raged. As the decade ended, Britain appeared more polarised than at any time since the Thatcherite 1980s, maybe more so. I hate that. That complete dislike and unwillingness to realise that politics is divisive by definition. Of course you can agree affably and disagree affably and amicably, but you're never going to be grinning idiots all with some horrid consensus or with some, some groupthink amongst you all. But anyway, so that's another picture of Keir Starmer in grayscale. It wasn't an immensely revelatory interview. Bilms asked, as I say, just sort of really baseless questions. He didn't try to pry out what Starmer was underneath it all. The situation now, a year into Sunak's premiership, Britain remains mired in the worst cost of living crisis for a generation. Wages are low, prices are high, interest rates have rocketed. At times it feels that these public workers who are not on strike are outnumbered by those who are. Transport workers, teachers, ambulance workers, passport officers, air traffic controllers, the staff of the British Museum, yada, yada, yada. The country is going to hell in a handbasket, and that is for a great many reasons, largely because of an economic crisis in 2007 and 8, which we've never recovered from, and the plunging of us into an irrevocable recession because of curtailments of civil liberties, and ridiculously irresponsible, and I think indefensible overreactions to a virus in 2020. But anyway, that pretty much covers the Esquire Winter Edition for 2023. Thank you ever so much for watching Slashing at Hacks. I'll be back a little bit later on in the week with a bookshelf tour, a little bit of a deep dive, as is the modern neologism of Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And I've also got a question that I'm thinking of filming about bookish fidelity, about simultaneously reading 4 or 5 books, which I believe some of you bizarre weirdos do. So yeah, I want to probe you on that, if that's not too much of a salacious way of putting it. But yes, thank you ever so much for watching BookTube, and goodbye.